Hi, welcome to this video. Today I wanted to approach the subject of, do you have to do squats to build legs? Do you have to do bench press to build chest? And do you have to do deadlift to build a good back? This is something that always comes across as a question usually when you're starting or where you're intermediate. This is something common that I see sometimes, that people get to movements because they're so popular. Everyone talks about the famous bench, deadlift, etc. And sometimes for some people, it feels impossible not to do these exercises because it's almost like the peer pressure is so high to do these exercises, and that if you don't do them, you're not doing something right. That a lot of people do them, but they actually might not need them. That's the question we're gonna answer today. Do we need them to build muscle or not? The three big main movements: squat, deadlift, and bench press. So I'm gonna give you the answer for short. For those who wanted a quick answer, the answer is that you don't need them to build muscle. And now I'm gonna explain you why. What's funny enough is that I would say for most people, the three exercises aren't particularly good on the long term. We usually see a lot of squat injuries and deadlift injuries, maybe not as much for bench press, but we still see a lot of injuries with the rotator cuff, or simply we see people that recruit other muscles when they're doing bench press, for example, than supposedly the chest. And so they're so famous today, these exercises, that people just include them in their session no matter what, because it's become too popular not to do them, and everyone around you when you start the gym will do them anyway, although it might not be good for them, and then it might not be good for you. So I think we should go around the key concepts first before going into why for each of these exercises they're not particularly an exercise that you need to do. First thing to remember is that a good exercise is an exercise that will stretch the muscle, that you can improve with in the long term, and so you can basically lift more and more weight with this exercise, and that isn't dangerous for you in the long term. This is what I would say is a good exercise. Sure, a good exercise, if it stretches and it also offers scalability, where you can actually improve over time, that's great. You still need also an exercise that is adapted to your body morphology. Otherwise you might injure yourself. So with the three things together, this is what a good exercise is for yourself. Gladly, most of the exercises that are presented on most websites, etc., are good exercises in a sense that they all pretty much have stretch. Some of them don't really actually offer good resistance, actually offer stretch, but most of them are pretty good. What you really need to know whether one is good for you is, is it gonna injure you in the long term? Is it an exercise that is adapted basically to your morphology and to yourself? This is, the other thing to really think about. If you're not sure of your morphology, which exercises can be good for you, it's always good, and I say, to find a good physiotherapist. And unfortunately in this field, it's always quite controversial. Some people might be good physiotherapists but still not know at all what to advise you, as in, to choose which exercises for your body morphology, which is a shame. It's a bit like a lawyer, or when you go to the therapist, you will find usually 2 good people out of 10, and it's hard to find a good one. Well, here, unfortunately, sometimes it's the same. People can send you in the wrong direction. So here, if you want to know, what your body morphology is and which exercises to use, try to find a good physiotherapist, someone who has experience, who's got the good reviews on the internet, and that will exactly know what he's talking about. In this sense, he will be able to analyze you. You can go, for a session. If you're a very tall person, or if you're short, your arm length, whatever it is, this person should be able to tell you which exercises. If he's specialized into weightlifting, lifting weights, he will be able to advise you. And this is key, because for now, I know most people, who might be watching bodybuilding online are 18 years old, 20, 25, and then when you do these exercises, and then later when you're 50, that's when you really understand that maybe you shouldn't have done these exercises. So I know you feel invincible when you're young. I guess I'm still young myself, but this is something that the more I bodybuild, the more I am careful about, and so I advise you as well to really choose the right exercises for you. Even though it might not hurt right now, you want to make sure that you use the right exercises to go long term. If you're injured for 1 year, 6 months, whatever it is, well, you can say bye to your gains basically. So it's better to take the time sometimes to find what is right for you and to never stop than go very fast and actually have to stop for a while, and then you realize that in the long term you're losing. So now that we understand these 3 key concepts of the scalability of an exercise, does it stretch and is it good for you, we understand why bench press, squat and deadlift might simply not be a good exercise for a person, and that it's not indispensable. You don't need to be to exercises to progress, even though these ones are the most famous in the industry and everyone tells you that they're good builders. In my opinion, we have plenty of other exercises that offer at least scalability and stretch, and that then will be the exercises that you will have to choose according to your body morphology. Everyone is different. We have basics in bodybuilding that always are true and that objectively people will improve with, but we don't have to neglect the individuality of everyone, and that exercise selection is very important. So don't, if you're a beginner right now watching this or someone who's been lifting for a while, but at some point you start to wonder if you should still keep it, the squat, etc. Well, you don't have to. And so now we're gonna, look at bench, squat, deadlift, each of them, and explain why, in my opinion, they might not be the best ones. So for the bench press, it's a good strength builder for sure, but then is it adapted for you or not? This is the question. This exercise has good stretch, but then it depends which muscle it's gonna stretch according to this morphology. It's got great scalability. You can go to infinity with bench press. You'll probably never reach what you could put on the max on the bar in your whole lifetime, because that would be something like 400 or 350. So you have infinity of scalability, which is great. Now the question is it good for you? In my opinion, an exercise that is supposed to be for chest is supposed to stretch the chest, which is not the case with the bench press always for most people. A lot of people will take it in the shoulders or in the triceps and just a little bit in the chest. It really depends. Some people have genetically quite a big thoracic cage, and so and pretty short arms, and so when they go down it will pretty stretch their chest muscle. But for other people who have long arms, good triceps, good shoulders, their chest will never take most of the work that the bench press is supposed to do, because when they go down they just don't have this morphology as the other one with a good thoracic cage that will make the chest stretch enough. So that's not a great exercise for most people. From what I've seen in the past, from what I've listened in the past, even tested myself, I know that when I do a bench press, it doesn't particularly stretch my chest as much as, for example, my triceps would take quite a lot of the work. So even when I take quite large, and then my arms are quite long, and so I don't get the stretch that some other people are getting on a bench press. It's simply not a good exercise for myself, but I love this lift, and so I've learned to arch quite a bit and to actually put myself pretty much in a safe position. But I don't really stretch my chest when I do it. I just love the exercise, so I still do it, and I do it also for triceps, because in this case I do get good results, so I do close grip bench press. But otherwise for chest it's not a great exercise, and I do flies instead, or you might be able to do some dumbbell flat press. So it's close to the bench press. It's the bench press with dumbbells, so you don't have to especially do the bench press with the barbell. If you were doing it until now and then you start feeling stiff or not very good, well, you can actually leave it to the side and change it. Now we're gonna talk about squats. It's again a great strength builder. There is no doubt about this. Squats are a great exercise for those who can take it, which is not the case for everyone. And I will even say, just like the deadlift I'm gonna say after, that unfortunately you might be able to do everything well for squats for years, and one day it just breaks. I've seen it for, one of my friend, great squat, low body weight, strong guy, and, squatting with perfect form, but just one day it just doesn't follow and that breaks. And then you have hernia. So unfortunately, you might do great form like you've been taught, lift good weight, be a beast with your legs. Squats, you just need one time to mess it up. And this is even more the case for people who don't have the morphology for it. I usually told people with, long legs are not so good at squatting. They have a big distance to do. Their lower back take a lot, even though, you might adapt your position to actually do a good squat. You will, at some point, usually for most people, start to wonder if it's a good exercise for you. And there are other exercises variations where you'll be able to do the same thing as a squat, but on the machine, on a hack squat, for example, where you have, you protect your back on a machine. Leg presses are pretty similar to a squat, and you can do them and protect your back. So it offers the stretch, scalability as well, and that's not a squat where you might re-injure your lower back. So again, even people who have short legs and usually are pretty good at squatting and are quite stable, at some point it might just not be, it might just not work anymore. So obviously it doesn't mean you need to change. Be always careful. If you warm up well, you do everything right, there is still chances that you're not gonna get injured. But still, overall squat is a great builder, but also a dangerous exercise overall. People don't want to admit it, but this is the truth, and you have to be careful with it, even more if your morphology is not the right one for it. Now we talk about the deadlift. So there is no doubt the deadlift is a great exercise as a builder. Again, you build with these compounds that I just talked about, good overall strength, and then it transfers to your hypertrophy, higher reps, isolation movements, and that's where you build some good meat. So these are good builders for sure, but the actual exercise themselves might not be the greatest. And so what's good is that there are variations though of these exercises. Like deadlift, there is, rack pulls, for example, and you can always try to find variations. Even for bench press, well, a close grip bench press is a bench press, but it's a variation where you do more triceps. So if you really love the movement, you will still be able usually to find something that won't hurt you as much as if you were doing the full movement. A deadlift usually can be obviously painful for the back. There is a lot of ego lifting in there, and we want to always say, well, my back is not fully straight, but I accept the lift, and this is true in a sense. The lift might be accepted in a competition, and that's a real deadlift, but a real deadlift is just dangerous in the end, and so it might not be worth it. And gladly, like I said, there are variations, so rack pulls where you might not injure your lower back as much, for example. So this is great. I encourage you for all these three exercises, to find variations if you really love these exercises. And to be able to still do them, but just in a way that is safer. Deadlift is just like the squat. It might go right 10,000 times, and then the 10,001, it just breaks. So you have to be very careful with it. Although if you always warm up, that you have a morphology that is okay for the deadlift, meaning usually that, you might not have very long legs and that you have pretty, good arm length, basically. Usually you're pretty safe for deadlift, but people who don't have the right morphology for this exercise, they take a lot of risk. And so, but even for the ones who have the good morphology, it might work for years and years, and all of a sudden it breaks because this exercise puts a lot of pressure to the spine, despite what we say. And so I encourage you still to, sure, do deadlift if you want to do it, but be careful and don't overly do it, and do variations that will still build the strength towards having a better deadlift, actual deadlift. And so you build the strength with variations, and then you can still try out to do sometimes to see your new PR for deadlift, because thanks to the variations you will still kind of improve, but you don't have to do directly hard deadlifts all the time. So what's the conclusion of this video? Well, just because an exercise is popular, it doesn't mean that this is an exercise that you have to do, despite what everyone is telling you, despite all the old school bodybuilders saying, well, bench press is the shit. Well, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. As I said, you have to first verify that there is good scalability, that the exercise offers a good stretch. But then the most important is to know yourself, start, knowing yourself, and to actually know which exercises are going to be good for your type of morphology, and not just the morphology in, for example, arm length, etc. Also just the muscle. For example, you have short biceps or long biceps, you will find exercises that offer a better stretch than another one. And so you have to start, thinking about what exercises will benefit you the most to make the most gains. Sure, if you feel very comfortable, carry on with these exercises, but then know that you might feel comfortable with the exercises for now because maybe you're young and you've got a lot of power, but maybe they're not exactly the right ones for you. So be careful with that. And then even if they're good for you, you never know. These are still exercises that put a lot of pressure to the back, for example, squat and deadlift, to the spine. And even though you might be good for this exercise, it might still hurt you in the long term. So be also very careful with that. Never forget about the fundamentals of a very good warm-up first before actually working out. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and if until now you were always wondering whether you need to carry on with these exercises that everyone said you should do, well, then you might feel a bit more free to not do them anymore and find incredible variations for back, like pull-ups, rows, etc. And even, for example, seal rows that will protect your back. There are tons of variations that still offer this scalability and this stretch, and that might be a lot better for you than the ones we talked about. So if you have questions about, for example, these exercises according to your morphology or anything else, I'll be more than happy to help you in the comments. So feel free to leave them down below, to like and share, and I will see you next time for a new video.